The owner threw the puppy in the trash, but someone heard a faint bark coming from the black bag. What happened next will move you. Have you ever stopped to think about how a simple look from a puppy can carry feelings so deep that even a heart of stone could be moved? Well, what if I told you that there is a story in which that look, even though it was pure, sweet and innocent, was ignored by someone who should have been your protector? What would you do if you saw such a fragile being being treated as nothing more than a disposable object? Prepare your heart, because what you will know now is more than a story. It is a silent appeal coming from a being who just wanted to exist, love, and be loved. He was born into a small litter, hidden in the back of a backyard, without any preparation or care. He was the smallest among his brothers, which made him more vulnerable from the beginning. His little body trembled even as the sun warmed the earth, and his low cry was barely heard by anyone passing by. His eyes were still half closed, like someone dreaming of the world outside, without knowing that for him, the world could be much more cruel than warm. It was a puppy with short fur, a mix of brown and black tones, with little ears flopped down and a little tail that attempted uncertain movements. That alone would be enough to make anyone fall in love, right? But not for the man who lived in that house. For him, that puppy was just another inconvenient responsibility. Any expense. A nuisance. He didn't even look at him with the slightest compassion, as if that small being was just another disposable nuisance. He was the type of person who sees animals as objects, as something that can be thrown away when it is no longer useful, and that's exactly what he did. That morning the sky was cloudy and the air felt heavy, as if I felt something horrible was about to happen. The man approached the cardboard box where the puppies were crammed. His steps were dry, determined, like those of someone who had already made a decision, and who didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt about it. He looked at the puppies one by one, as if evaluating goods, but when his eyes fell on the runt of the litter, he grimaced in disgust. He was too thin, weak. "That one won't last long," he muttered dismissively, as if he were talking about a split piece of wood. Without any hesitation, he picked up the puppy by its hind legs, as if it were an old object, the little one. I tried to let out a whine, but his voice was too weak to protest. His eyes, even though they were barely open, seemed to plead, "Why?" But the man saw no eyes. He only saw what he called the problem. He walked to the back of the house, opened the side gate and left. In one hand, a black plastic bag. In the other, that puppy that never had the chance to be loved. Can you imagine what goes on in the mind of such a pure being when he is placed inside a dark bag, without light, without air, without affection? The strong smell of the garbage, the suffocating heat inside the plastic, the despair of not understanding what is happening. He writhed, tried to make sounds, but his body was still too small to offer resistance. And even so, inside that suffocating prison, he still didn't give up, because that's what dogs do. Even hurt, even betrayed, they continue to love. They keep believing that somehow, someone will come, someone will listen, someone will save. The man walked for a few blocks until he found a trash container on a less traveled street. He threw the bag like someone discarding an empty package. He turned his back without even looking back, and he continued on his way, as if nothing had happened. But what about the puppy? He stayed there motionless for a few seconds. The impact of the fall left him even weaker, but his little heart, oh, that one was still beating, and each beat was a whisper. I want to live. It is at this moment that we need to stop and reflect. How many lives like his are silenced every day by hands that should welcome them? How many looks full of hope are ignored until the last breath? But this story, although cruel, does not end here. And if you've come this far, it's because you feel the same way I do. A mixture of anger, pain, and a burning desire to know what happened next. Who heard that faint sound? Who had enough heart to realize that even inside a black bag, there was a life crying out for love? The answer is closer than you think. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you that no matter how cruel humans can be, there are still angels of flesh and blood, and some of them have the gift of hearing even the faintest of barks. This story touched your heart, right? Because those who truly love cannot remain indifferent in the face of an injustice like this. And it's okay if a tear fell. Here, you're among people who also feel deeply, who see in a dog's eyes everything that the world sometimes forgets: love, loyalty, hope. You are part of that rare group of people who care, that gets emotional, who vibrates with every rescue, who cries with every abandonment, and who believes that every life deserves a second chance. So stick with us. Here, each story is more than a video. It's a cry for compassion. It's a collective hug for those who never had a voice. Like this video now and subscribe to the channel. Let's spread these stories to the world, because together we make noise and save lives. Have you ever noticed how some nights seem to carry a different sadness in the air, as if heaven also felt pain and cried along with those who were forgotten? It was dawn, the kind of dawn where silence weighs more than noise, and the wind seems to whisper stories that no one wants to hear. And that night it rained. Not that light, romantic rain that brings relief. It was a dense, freezing rain, the kind that invades the soul and makes everything seem even grayer. At the bottom of a forgotten alley in the city, a rusty container creaked slightly every time the wind hit harder. The sound was almost imperceptible, but here, in the middle of the night, it seemed like shouting. The floor was a mixture of mud and puddles of water that reflected the dim lights of a flickering streetlight. The smell was strong, suffocating, a combination of rotting food, wet paper, and the remains of life that no one wanted anymore. A scenario where nothing should exist, much less something as pure as a puppy. Inside that container, among torn bags and broken objects, there was a black bag, ordinary, like so many others, except for one detail. It moved. Deep inside, almost hidden, rested the bag where the puppy had been thrown hours before. The rain had soaked everything around except him, who, ironically, was in a slightly more protected part. But the cold entered like a knife through the holes in the bag and made the little body tremble without stopping. The noise of the drops hitting the metal echoed like sad drums. Plock, plock, plock. Every now and then a distant thunder ripped through the sky, illuminating the gloomy environment for a few seconds. It was as if nature wanted to show the injustice that had been done there, even if no one was looking. And indeed, no one was. The street was empty, the nearby houses were dark, with closed windows and sleeping hearts. The world went on with its routine, while a defenseless life struggled to exist amidst the trash. Inside the bag, the puppy didn't understand what was happening. His senses were still forming, but instinct screamed louder. Fear. He didn't know what the sound of rain was. He didn't understand the putrid smell that invaded his nostrils, nor the darkness that enveloped him like a prison. But he felt pain. I felt cold. I felt hungry. And more than anything, I felt abandoned. He had stopped crying a long time ago, not because the fear passed, but because his voice got tired. His barks, at first high-pitched and distressed, turned into short sighs, then into low, almost imperceptible moans. Now he just breathed, little by little, with difficulty, like someone who doesn't know if they'll have the strength to continue for another minute. The weight of the bag pressed against his body, and the food debris around it spread a sour smell that invaded his lungs with each breath. A piece of gnawed bone rested against its paw. A crushed can punctured a corner of the plastic. Every movement was an effort. Every attempt to adjust himself, a challenge. And yet, there was something in him that wouldn't let him give up. Something small, invisible, but very powerful. Hope. The street outside remained silent. Drops of rain washed the sidewalks, ran down the edges of the container, fell heavily on the surrounding roofs. A car passed slowly, raising water from the puddle next to it, but it didn't stop. A stray dog barked in the distance, as if sensing something, but soon fell silent. World was spinning while that puppy was still there, lonely, hidden, abandoned, still breathing. And can you imagine what it's like to exist without being seen? What is it like to have your life reduced to the sound of your own heart beating in the dark, surrounded by the remains of what once had value? What does it feel like to be thrown away as something unimportant, and yet continue fighting? That's what he did. I fought. Between hunger, cold, fear, and loneliness, he clung to life as best he could. And even though his body was weak, his spirit insisted, because that's what dogs do. Even without understanding why they were hurt, betrayed, or left behind, they continue to hope. They continue to believe. They continue to love. With each passing second, his breathing became shorter, more subtle. Such a small puppy, with so much to live for, trapped in a world of darkness and neglect. But destiny sometimes has mysterious ways of acting. Sometimes, when everything seems lost, when the last hope seems to disappear, that's when something changes. And maybe in that wet street, in that silent alley, in that dawn of pain, someone was about to hear a sound, an almost imperceptible sound, but strong enough to break the silence of injustice. But who would be able to hear? Who would have the heart attentive enough to notice what was hidden between the sounds of rain and the smell of garbage? And, most importantly, would it arrive on time? Do you believe that there are looks that speak more than any words, that just a second of eye contact is enough for two souls to recognize each other? That was exactly what happened to Donna Marlene at that moment. She was still trying to understand how that faint sound, muffled by the sound of the rain and the weight of the night, had managed to call her. But now here, kneeling in front of a torn black bag, she knew it wasn't just a fluke. It was a calling, one of those that life sends to those who have an attentive heart. And she answered. The bag was wet, heavy at the ends, and the smell coming from it was suffocating. Remains of rotting food, plastic, crushed cans. But Donna Marlene, even though she was fragile in her gestures, opened that package of cruelty with the firmness of someone who knows what she is doing. His heart beat wildly, not out of fear but out of urgency. Something inside her already knew. There was a life there, a life hanging by an invisible thread. When she opened the bag completely for a moment, she stopped breathing. Time also seemed to stop. It was as if the world had gone silent just for that moment to be felt with all its intensity. Lying among the trash, curled up and shivering, was a little puppy. It was so small that it barely filled the bottom of the bag, so dirty that it was difficult to tell its real color. But the eyes, oh, the eyes, they were open and looking right at her. Those eyes didn't accuse, didn't complain, didn't ask for explanations. They just begged, as if to say, please don't leave me here. It was the deepest look she had ever seen. Not even the most painful lament could convey what that puppy felt at that moment. And for a second, the crying stopped, as if he knew something had changed, that there, in that dirty alley, in that forgotten container, the chance to live had arrived. Donna Marlene didn't hesitate. He took the coat off his back, wrapped it around the puppy's wet body, and pressed it against his chest, trying to protect him from the rain. That was still falling mercilessly. I could feel his little heart beating softly, like a note out of tune in the middle of the early morning orchestra. But it hit, and that was all that mattered. Without thinking twice, she started running. His knees hurt. The floor was slippery, his steps were uncertain. But she ran. He ran like someone carrying a world in his hands. Every second seemed to last an eternity. The cold cut into her skin, but she didn't even notice. The only thing he heard was the sound of the puppy's weak breathing, increasingly spaced out, slower and slower, as if he was between life and the other side. And with every beat of her heart, she silently prayed, hold on, just a little longer. The nearest clinic was a few blocks away. She knew the vet. He'd already taken his old dog there years ago. The lights were off, but she knocked on the gate hard. He shouted, he cried, and when the door finally opened, she almost fell to her knees. It's a life, he shouted. He's still alive, please help me. The veterinarian, a calm and experienced man, carefully picked up the puppy. His eyes, accustomed to all types of situations, narrowed as he analyzed that small body. It was a difficult scene to digest. The cub was malnourished, hypothermic, covered in dirt, and showed signs of recent neglect. The condition was very serious. The veterinarian looked at Donna Marlene with a serious expression and said what she would never forget. 10 more minutes, and he wouldn't be here anymore. There were tense hours. The team rushed to warm the puppy, monitor its heartbeat, hydrate it, clean it, and care for it. Every movement was an effort to keep him between us. And Donna Marlene, she sat there, with her eyes fixed on the living room door, holding her heart in her hands. It wasn't just a puppy fighting for its life. It was also the chance to transform old pain into new love. It was proof that even what was thrown away can be precious, that what is invisible to the hard eyes of the world can become light in the right hands. Hours later, the vet returned. He didn't have a smile on his face. It was still too early to celebrate, but there was a sparkle in his eyes. The little puppy had reacted. Little, but enough to give hope. He had started to breathe more heavily, and even though he was weak, he had tried to move one of his paws. It was as if he was saying, I'm still here, I haven't given up. And perhaps that is the real miracle. Not the fact that Donna Marlene heard that sound, nor the exact time he arrived at the clinic, but yes, that little puppy's decision to live, to keep fighting, even after everything, after the darkness, the cold, the rejection. And you who have come this far, can you feel this? Can you imagine what it's like to fight for every second of your life without even understanding why? Can you see in this little being all the strength he carries? Because this story, despite being emotional so far, is still just beginning. And what happened next will show that love, when it finds a broken heart, can heal not just one, but two beings at the same time. Have you ever noticed how some names seem to have a life of their own? How do certain words carry meanings that go beyond sound? Sometimes a name is born not from the mouth of the speaker, but from the heart of the person who feels. And that's exactly how that little puppy's name came about. After everything he had been through, the abandonment, the fear, the pain, he needed something that defined him not by the sadness he experienced, but by the hope he carried in his eyes. And then, without rehearsal, without thinking too much, Donna Marlene looked at him and said, "You are my light." It was as if everything made sense at that moment. He, still fragile, wrapped in blankets, lying on a makeshift bed next to the sofa, looked up at her. The same eyes that days ago begged for help now reflected something new, a shy glow, almost hidden but real. The kind of glow that comes when a soul realizes that finally it is no longer alone. Lucy's recovery was not quick. The small body still felt the effects of cold and hunger. The ribs were still visible, and the strength in the paws took a while to return. But there was something about him that grew faster than any muscle. Confidence. Every day he allowed himself a little more. A timid step off the path. A low bark when he heard a strange noise. A shake of my ass as I smelled hot porridge being cooked. Donna Marlene became everything he needed. She was a nurse, mother, protector, and best friend. There wasn't a second of the day when she wasn't attentive to his signs. A different tremor, a grumble of pain, a more tired look. But there also wasn't a moment when she didn't smile when she saw the small evolution of her new companion, because for her, every smallest gesture of light was a victory. Every movement was a silent miracle happening right there in the living room of his house. The nights, before so silent and lonely, were now filled with peaceful breathing, and that almost imperceptible sound of little paws dragging across the floor. Sometimes he woke up scared, as if remembering the dark bag, the cold, the smell of the garbage. But the touch of Donna Marlene's hand was enough for him to relax. And that's when true healing begins. When fear still tries to return, but love has already become stronger. She talked to him every day. She talked about her life, about the dog. That had gone. About the pain of losing and the fear of being alone. And although Luce didn't understand every word, he understood everything. I understood with the body, with the eyes, with the soul. Every time he laid his head on her lap, it was as if he were saying, "I understand you too, and I'm here." As the weeks passed, Luce began to change. The fur gained shine. The eyes came to life. The body, once fragile, now stood up more firmly. And the ass, oh, the ass shook with joy every time. Donna Marlene entered the room. He learned that that house was his, that the little rug in the corner of the kitchen was where I could lie down in peace, that the sound of the kettle was not a threat, but a sign that delicious food was coming, that the world could be kind, and most of all that he was loved. But perhaps the most beautiful thing of all wasn't even the physical recovery. It was an invisible transformation, one that only those who observe with their hearts can see. Luce was no longer just a survivor. He was now a presence, a constant companion, a daily reminder that life can begin again, even after so much suffering. And Donna Marlene, that lady with slow steps and sad eyes, has transformed. It was as if the act of caring for Luce had ignited something in her that had been dormant. She started smiling more easily again, leaving the house more often, talking to her neighbors. And when she spoke about Luce, her eyes shone. "He really is my light," he said. It lit up everything. That was dark inside. It was at that moment that the story stopped being just about rescue. It became about healing, about rebirth, about two broken beings who, when they found each other, mended themselves. Because love has that power. He doesn't erase the past, but it transforms the future. And Luce knew that. He knew it every time he lay on her lap, every time he got a piece of bread in his hand, every time he received a kiss on the top of his head. He didn't need to understand words. It was enough to feel it, and he felt it. I felt like for the first time I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Have you ever had the feeling that, as simple as it may seem, a meeting was written in the stars, as if the universe, in its silent wisdom, had woven the threads of life with purpose? That's what happened to Donna Marlene and Luz. A rescue that, at first glance, seemed just a gesture of compassion, turned out to be one of those rare encounters that transform not only the present, but everything that comes after. Luz, that fragile little puppy who could barely breathe when he was found, didn't just survive, he flourished. And with it, something inside Donna Marlene also blossomed. It's curious how animals have this magical power to touch places in our soul that we didn't even know were hurt. They arrive with silence, with looks, with small presences, but they heal with a depth that no medicine can reach. Donna Marlene's routine changed completely. Previously marked by silence and solitude, it became full of small rituals. Coffee time, which now included a bowl of warm milk for Luz, the short walks around the block where the neighbors began to fall in love with the puppy, and even conversations with strangers who approached to ask about that dog with such lively eyes and such a sweet expression. But what changed most was inside her. The absence that had weighed on her since the death of her former dog was no longer a hole. It was now a serene memory, a longing, accompanied by a new meaning. Light did not come to replace anyone. He came to occupy the space that only love is capable of recreating. Where there was once pain, there was now gratitude. And Luz also changed. From a puppy that trembled in fear at every loud sound, he started running with joy when he heard the chain on the door, a sign that it was time to go for a walk. The one who previously shrank from any hand now asked for affection with his paw, gently touching Donna Marlene's arm, as if to say, "Don't forget me, I'm here." It was as if he knew that her love didn't just save him, it made him born again. The nights were different now. Luz slept at the foot of her bed, and every now and then he slowly climbed up to curl up against her chest, and she let it. Because in that warm touch and that calm breath, there was a type of healing that no medicine could offer. It was an invisible but indestructible link. And then, between a sunny morning and a rainy afternoon, Donna Marlene understood. She wasn't the one who saved Luz. He was the one who saved her. Of a life without purpose, of colorless days, of a silent morning that seemed to have no end. Luz wasn't just a puppy. He was the angel who appeared at the right time, in the most unlikely way to remind us that love never dies. It just changes form. She went on to say this to everyone who knew her story. While some discard innocent lives, I found an angel where no one else looked. It was this phrase that she repeated when she saw someone mistreating an animal, when she heard stories of abandonment, or when she held Luz in her lap while he slept peacefully. And every time she said it, something inside her grew stronger. It was as if she was saying not only to the world, but also to herself, "I still believe." And believing is what has kept Donna Marlene firm since then. She began participating in animal protection groups. He started helping with small donations to local NGOs. Sometimes she took in another puppy temporarily, even though she knew that no other would take Luz's place, because now she knew every life matters. Every life can be a miracle waiting to happen. And perhaps this is the greatest redemption of all, when pain gives way to mission, when what hurt starts to boost, when we understand that even amidst the cruelty of the world, it is still possible to be light, or welcome one. Luz, with her unlikely story and her quiet courage, became more than a saved dog. He became a symbol. He represented everyone who is still waiting to be heard at the bottom of some container. He showed that all it takes is one person with an attentive heart to change the destiny of an entire being. And Donna Marlene? She was reborn with him. And today, every time someone asks about that dog that was once found in the trash, she smiles with teary eyes and responds with pride. That's Luz. He was thrown away by someone who didn't know how to love, and found by me, who didn't know how much he still needed to love. Because this is how a story of abandonment ends, with multiplied love, with lives that heal, and with the certainty that where many see just another animal, there are those who see an angel. Stories like today's touch us deeply because they show that even in the worst scenarios, There is still love capable of transforming everything. Maybe, at some point in this video, you felt something different. A memory, a lump in your throat, that heat in your chest that only those who truly love animals can understand, and that already says a lot about you. This content was made to remind you that hope exists, and if it moved you, strengthened you, or made you reflect, then it has already fulfilled its purpose. And now, through a simple gesture, you can make it reach even more people who need to feel the same. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and write the word here in the comments, light. This way, we spread this chain of good together, like a family that believes in second beginnings. And look, if this story has already moved you, just wait and see what comes in the next video. There's a twist that will chill your soul. It's appearing on the screen now. Click and continue with us. The next story is not only exciting, so it will stay with you for a long time. Let's go together, because there is much more light coming.